Hey everybody, this is George. Welcome back. All right, so here we go. It's April 1st. I was going to start off with a joke, but everybody said I shouldn't do it. So anyway, a shout out to one of my dear friends, Justin, who was born on April Fool's Day. He's been tormenting his parents ever since. And of course, he's half a century old today. So happy 50th birthday, Justin. Anyway, so with that, let's get on with the show. So what the heck, man? We're down to 1.4 months of inventory. And you might be saying, what does that mean? Well, that's very simple. If we have a bucket and everybody, all the agents and every single real estate company, they put their listings in this bucket, and I put a lid on it, and I call that bucket the Northwest MLS, or the multiple listing service, we should have 4 to 6 months of inventory in that bucket to sell. That is considered a balanced market historically. Now, funny enough, we haven't seen those numbers since probably 2013. So when we take a look at what's going on today versus even what was happening in January or even December or November or October, when our inventory was double where we're at today, this is going to be a big deal because, as you know, supply and demand is going to have a significant impact on pricing because there's a lot of media noise out there. There's a lot of what I call noise out in the industry in different areas and people estimating what the heck's going on. And we're just going to dial that right in for you. So let's do this. So first of all, remember, let's get to my big screen here. Let's make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And in fact, smash the subscribe button. Why? Because listen, you help the algorithm help others to get really good, solid information. Look, there's no selling. That's the super cool part. But everybody's talking about February. Now, I hate to break this to you. It is April now. So you want real-time information. You don't need what happened in February. We already talked about that in February. This is real time. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and share so that other people can get this information. Share it with people that you like, okay? This way they can make a really good business decision. And that's all this is about. And remember to keep asking those questions because we will address them. And normally we get to you in about 30 minutes, except for on Sundays, but we'll get to you in about 30 minutes and answer your questions. Sometimes we send you a video and whatnot because it's just easier to explain it then. Anyway, on with the show here. So when we take a look at the what is going on, you can see that Friday, which is a big number for us, 974 homes came on market. There were 1,284 that came off, and there were 922 that sold. During the week, it was averaging roughly about 800, dipped down to about 600 that, running 7-day average, depending on what part of the week. But you can still see that we are still, for every home that's coming on market, 1.5 are coming off. And during the middle of the week, it's 1 comes on market, 2 go off market. And we are continuing, at least since the middle of October, to continue to draw those numbers down. That is super important to understand because there are fewer and fewer homes available for buyers. We are seeing multiple offers again. We are seeing a small escalation, not the craziness that we saw before, but definitely we're seeing some escalations. But more importantly, we are seeing really good pricing and the multiple offers with the buyers out there. Every single home that we have looked at have had multiple offers. Go figure. All right. So when we go on to our next slide here, you can see that our April numbers, well, technically March, you can see that the highlighted section there, super easy to understand. The dark green is the number of solds. Light green are the homes that are available. So when we look at last year, you can see that the dark green outperformed the light green. Well, holy smokes, we had, I think it was 7 days of inventory this time last year. Well, that is peanuts. At least we have 1.4 months of inventory instead of days. We have at least a little over a month. Now, understand, as we go through the presentation today, you're going to understand how this is going to be super important, and not to listen to the rhetoric that is out there on the national level, because each market is individual to itself, and they're looking at things on a much bigger scale. We're going to be, looking at some information from Matthew Gardner from Windermere, their chief economist, super smart guy, along with, Daryl, I forgot her last name. Anyway, from Redfin, and then, of course, Hannah Jones from Realtor.com. We're going to go through those. And for those of you that wonder if this is, do I have a script? The answer is no. I actually create the presentation, and then I give it to you guys. And I guess that's from one side. I guess I know my stuff. On the other side, there's no script for me to fall back on. So if I forget a name, well, then I have actually forgotten it. Anyway, but it'll come to me later. So moving on. So let's take a look at this. So get a load of this. Anyway, so month over month, when we take a look at February to March, and we have our solid numbers here, you can see that everything as far as pended, sold, our active inventory, our new listings coming back on, are all in the very positive. And that is completely normal as we continue to head into the spring market, in which our spring market is, and we can feel that distinct difference. Now, all right, let's be super clear here, guys. Super, super clear. Sellers, listen, just because we have a limited inventory, just because we're seeing, that buyer demand coming out, and we're seeing the escalations and multiple offers coming into play, that does not mean you can crank up the price. I hate to break this to you. That is a bad idea. You must be super sensitive, because remember, if your home sells in the first 7 to 10 days, you're going to look at between 100, 107% of list price. If you miss that mark and you go out to 20 days, you're going to look at 98, 96% of list price. If you miss that mark and you go out to 40 days, look, you're going to look at 92 to 93% of the list price. It is super important to understand, if you want more dollars in your pocket with retaining more control over the sale, you need to price yourself more competitively. The longer you are on market, the worse off you are, statistically speaking. I can prove it day in and day out. I have had a couple of sellers in which one I just spoke to yesterday, they laughed and like, oh my gosh, you were absolutely spot on, when we did a valuation for them, and they actually went and tested. Out of the 8 homes that were sent, only one of them was just outside. It was, it was on market for 45 days, and I think it was 93.2%. It was just on the other side. But anyway, for the most part, it's accurate, statistically speaking, right? All right, moving on. All right. So if we come back to this and we take a look at the year to date, year over year, year to date, you can see that our sales are down, quote unquote, 27%. And our new listings are down 27%. The solds are down almost 27.5%, which again is not unexpected, considering the fact that, well, guess what? Interest rates are double where they were at last year. Now, that is going to start to change this month, because remember, as we showed you last week, end of month numbers, our inventory in April of 2022 had actually jumped up quite a bit, like from 3,600 to over 5,000. Okay. Well, we're at 6,000 and change right now. And when you take a look at those numbers, hey, we're getting pretty close to where we're going to start seeing where it looks like it's a better market than it was last year. And that's upon us. And it's probably going to happen, even though there's some interest rate bobbling going on that we need to be mindful of. All right, moving on. When we take, when we take a look at new construction, you can see again, look at the light green, man. It's like, boom, look at that. We have tons and tons of inventory. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, what is going on? But guess what? Take a look at this. We're taking it all off the market. That is awesome sauce. Look at that. So our pendant sales just year over year is up 19%. And when we take a look at just March of last year and March of this year, pendants are up 32.4%. and our sales are only down for new construction. They're only down basically, what is that? 30 homes, 31 homes. That's it. That's it. Year over year, 31 homes. And interest rates were half of what they are now. And we are still seeing that pressure. Why are we seeing an increased volume of sales and pending in new construction? Well, naturally, people like new homes, right? All right, like new cars, they like new homes. Plus, there's a lot of incentives from builders right now, and you can get some serious benefits on some of these plots that have a, hey, the builder lost their seller or their buyer, or the fact that they have standing product that they need to get off the market. Great opportunities. Toll Brothers is absolutely just killing it with their marketing, and they did a really great job tactically speaking. I'm going to see how that progresses through the week. Actually, the weekend is when that will hit. We'll see how much activity that created for them. And I'll be giving the site agent a call to find out what's going on. Anyway, so in the regards to new construction, bam, they're hitting it and they're doing great. Why? Because there's not a lot of homes available out there in the industry. If you think about it, half of Washington State only has 6,300 homes when, just a couple of months ago, we had 13,000 homes. Half of Washington State, half. That's peanuts. So anyway, we need more sellers coming on market, which we might see. When we take a look at the bank-owned homes, you can see here that we spiked a little bit, not uncommon. But really, at the end of the day, when we take a look at the numbers, we're talking about peanuts here. They say, oh my gosh, foreclosures are up 80%. It's actually an REO. Bank-owned homes are up 80%. Yeah, okay. Well, we're only talking about 25 homes through all of Washington State, or half of Washington State. That's nothing. That'll go away. You can see that the sales, we're right on target with where we should be. They're coming off just as much. Look, we're still one of the 5 sweet spots across the United States, but understand this. Even lenders, there are some lenders out there that are pushing price because they think that they might be able to get it. Maybe. The reality is that most of the foreclosures that we see out there, they're clunkers. I mean, really, you look at the one out in Marysville, it's almost comical. It's just a scrape. It's a better of a scrape. It's cheaper to scrape it than it is to build it or rehab it. Just saying. All right, let's get on to the next slide here. Look at this. So when we talk, and let me blow this slide up for you. All right, when we talk about average days on market versus also the sales price compared to the original list price. So we were at last year about 108%, not uncommon, because again, we had such super limited inventory. We had tons of escalations going on. And then as interest rates, started to increase, that number started to go down. And as you can see, we were dipping down in the 94%, meaning if I listed my house at $100,000, from September through basically December, January, I was only looking at getting $94,000 for my $100,000 listing. Now I'm at $97,000. That is starting to swing back up again, which is totally normal. And even though market times went up starting in, basically July of last year, that number has actually started to dip back down for our spring market again, as we're seeing more activity. Completely expected, and is a normal seasonal cycle. Just like interest rates, we're still seeing a normal seasonal cycle. And we'll delve into that one a little bit more. Okay, so when we talk about, and this is an important one, we talk about sales prices, both, sales prices and list prices are showing month over month an upward trend, a little bit of a downward trend from last year. But understand, let's keep something in perspective. A sales price or an average sales price for an area, if they say, hey, it's lower than it was last year, that's just an average sales price. That doesn't necessarily mean a home's value came down. It's what people were buying that came down. Now, yes, sometimes the two have a relationship together, but keep that in mind. So if they're saying that, hey, you know what, the average sales price is down, 4%. That doesn't mean that somebody's house went down 4% in value. It just means that the average of what people were purchasing. Well, and here's the logic, right? As mortgage rates go up, people can afford less, and therefore they would be looking at a different price point. Sometimes the homes that they're looking at are adjusting in that price point. Sometimes they just go to a different price point. But in many of our areas, we're actually seeing price appreciation in the urban areas. Rural areas are seeing a little bit, not so much an increase, maybe a little flat, sometimes a little bit less, but we're still seeing some positive numbers out there. So make sure that you differentiate differentiate the two. Sales price versus actual market value have a relationship, but they are not directly related. One does not control the other, not necessarily. Anyway, my humble opinion. Look at that. Here we go. Here's our title. So just in December, January, we had 2.5 months of inventory. That ended up going, basically when we go back to June, when we were at 2.1, then it dipped down a little bit during the summer. And then, of course, it popped back up again, 2.3, 2.2, 2.5, 1.4 months of inventory. And that is super important to understand because that just means there are less homes. And our absorption rate, when we use the sponge story, right now that sponge is able to absorb a lot more water, okay? For those of you that don't know the sponge story, last year in March, April, that sponge was dry because there wasn't very much inventory out there. And every bit of inventory or water that we would pour into that sponge, it would just suck it up. It would suck it up. And then as we hit June, July, as you can see, by 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 months of inventory, that sponge got to the point where it was, holding about as much water as it could, and maybe it was giving a little bit of water back. When you fill the sponge too much, starts spilling out a little bit. Right now, we're pouring that water into that sponge, and it's taking it. Okay, and in fact, that sponge is getting drier, and we're not putting enough water to keep that sponge full. Sponge analogy. Anyway, moving on. No more sponge stories. Here we go. Rates. Here we're going to come into a funny little story. And no, I'm not going to tell a story. So rates have been bobbling up and down. As you can see, they've been heading in a slightly downward trend. Par pricing today is right about 6.32. Okay. When we take a look at a bigger scale here, 6.57. Yeah, these are the rates as of Friday. And as you can see, things are kind of bobbling around. And as you can also see that the 5-1 arms are at 6.60. So not as much of a value as they are with the 30-year fix. And that's one of the other things that as you guys are looking at different options, make sure you're looking at all options and what ones make the greatest amount of sense. Because right now getting 30-year money is cheaper than buying a 5 and 6 arm. 5 and 6. It used to be a 5-1, meaning it's fixed for 5 years and adjusts once a year. Okay. Now it's a 5-year arm and it adjusts every 6 months. And they made that change. You don't really see 5-1s anymore. It's mostly 5 and 6 because they adjust biannually. All right. When we take a look at what's going on, when we take a look at Ye Old Fred report, says by late 1981, rates were more than 18%. By comparison, in the 1970s and in the early 80s, the current inflation rate was just over 6%, which doesn't seem so bad today. Nor does the current average rate of 6.42% for a 30-year fixed mortgage seem all that terrible today. And when you take a look at this, you might be saying, George, what the heck? Why are we going back to the 70s and 80s? That is so funny because here's the thing. I told you I wasn't going to tell you a story, but we don't have a 3-hour tour like Gilligan's Island, so I'll keep it short. Here's the thing. Because this market is so unique, and a lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to be as bad as 2008. And I'm like, there's no way it can be like 2008. We don't have the inventory. 2008, we had 10 months of inventory. It's probably not that much, but in some areas, they actually had 13 months of inventory. We have 1.4 months of inventory. So here's the thing. 2008, gobs and gobs and gobs of inventory. Today, we have very little inventory. Back then, interest rates were in the mid 5s. and sixes, mid fives, and started to come down a little bit. We're in the low sixes, high fives, and we're having some. We had a massive increase in rate, but it appears to be leveling out. The pivot, which the Feds might very well be on the verge of a pivot because they are adversely affecting the commercial industry. But because we don't look like and don't even resemble 2008, they went back to the 90s. Then they went back to the 70s. And even in the 70s, they had more inventory and rates were crazy high. In the 90s, we had modest rates right about where we're at, more inventory. But, we just don't seem to fit into those. And so they've been going back further and further to find out what market is most similar to us. And we're in a very unique market. And it's a little bit crazy. Inflation's been upward trend, mortgage rates upward trend, but our inventory is historically low. And so they've been trying to, go back and forth to get, hey, what is a better metric? What is a better way of looking at this? And so when we look at this, they say, hey, a slow spring with some potential for hope. And Hannah Jones with Realtor.com, she said the selling season is likely to be a lot less active. All right. She says continued declines, continue with a little bit of softening. Sellers grapple with high rates and buyers who have less purchasing power. All right, that's fine. When we take a look at, but that doesn't mean that the spring is going to be a total bust. When we take a look at what Matt had to say, it says it's even possible that demand could tick upwards. Rates could actually come down somewhere this year, which is entirely possible. It is predicted more for Q4. We are doing exactly what was predicted, during our show last year. We're actually pretty accurate, all things considered. I'm pretty proud of that. So we're expecting maybe Q4 will actually see some softening of the market if we are actually in the Fed pivot right now, which would then we would start seeing the mortgages going down. Remember, the Feds do not control long-term mortgage rates. That's a stock market thing. Mortgage-backed securities, watch your 10-year treasury notes and things like that. Feds control car loans, home equity line of credits, or a HELOC, what lenders lend to each other on a daily basis, credit card rates, things like that. That's what they control. That's why commercial banks are having a little bit of a struggle because they went from basically 0 to 5% on cost of funds. And of course, that gets translated out to their customers. Customers are having time, making that. And that's why commercial lending has a little bit of a hiccup, right? All right. Along with a few other things. All right. So as we move forward and we take a look at what these guys are doing and why they're comparing that to past markets is because our market is very unique in what we are doing. So if you have any questions, again, make sure you reach out, subscribe, share this with people you like. Let us know what you think. If there's anything else information-wise you want, hey, we're here for you. And in the meantime, it's an absolutely stunning day out there. Have a fabulous weekend, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.